Good day, welcome to Endurance Room. Over the last several months, we've had a number of experiences, encounters in upstate New York. We talked about one in an earlier video that happened in Morgan Hill State Forest. But most recently, during our trip to the Catskills, we had an encounter. We drove deep into the mountains. It was a pinewood forest. We filmed an overnight video. I'll leave a link to it. We camped along a creek bed and set up our camp, set up our fire, had dinner, and shortly before sunset, we heard a series of really low, powerful howls about 1.5 miles from our camp. And whatever was howling, it traveled over a short period of time, a great distance around the perimeter of our camp from the south to the east. We had dinner, made a fire, and set up our lavoo. The dog was adamant about coming into the tent that night. He did not want to be left outside. And as we were in there, we started hearing sticks breaking. We heard a large rock thrown into the creek right in front of our camp.
I have a stainless carabiner cup that my friend Evelyn gave me, and I keep it clipped on the front of my pack. I didn't use it, but for some reason, and I was sleeping with my pack as my pillow, with all of my gear in the bag, in the tent to keep it dry. And the clip somehow came undone, and the cup was right in front of the tent.
Outside of the tent. I'd hung our food bag and trash about 100 yards from camp up in a tree. I went to check on it in the morning, and the food had been taken out of the tree and tossed down the hill towards the creek. None of the food had been eaten.
If it was a bear, it definitely would have been eaten.
It would have shredded it. It would have shredded the trash. We talked about it, had some coffee, and put some of our gear in the Jeep before taking about a 4-mile hike up the creek and then back down a road back to our Jeep before leaving.
I kind of freaked out because I saw the shape of a man, and it was dark and it looked really tall, but it was like crouching down, like perhaps 100 feet, 200 feet away. But I didn't say anything. I was like, oh, it's just some roots or something. Like, I'm tripping out. I didn't tell him. So we get back to the Jeep, and I needed water, and he's like, I'll go down to the creek and fill up. And I was saying, make sure you come back, because I was so creeped out about what I saw. I still didn't tell him though.
So I made my way down to the water. It was about 200 yards from the Jeep. I was about 15 feet from the creek, the edge of the creek, and I noticed movement across the creek bed, which is about 50 yards, slightly to my right. I turned my head immediately and focused in on this upright thing turning away from me. The face was a blur. It was in mid-motion, but I focused in on the back. It was super broad. The shoulders are about twice the width of like a football player with pads on, like thick. The neck was like this, kind of like the juggernaut. Big round head and shiny black fur. It reminded me of deer hair from the texture. It was really shiny, and then it had like a white V that came down the back of the neck and kind of around the front. The arms didn't move as it ran, but it was like it propelled itself forward with its feet. I would say I had eyes on it for about 30 yards before it disappeared, and it only took 2 steps for it to do that. It was really fast. The whole encounter was maybe 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds before it was out of sight. I filled up the water in a hurry and ran back up to the Jeep. She was all locked up in the Jeep with the dog. It took me a second to tell her what had happened. I just kind of had this shocked look on my face, and I wanted to make sure she was okay.
He wouldn't tell me at first. I was like, what's wrong? He had a puppy dog kind of look on his face, and I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he's like, what the? And then he told me, and I was like, are you trying to freak me out, or are you pulling my leg? Did you really see that? I told him what I had seen on the way back to the Jeep, and Lyle was like, hurry up, come back fast.
The whole time,
And then
we were hiking up the creek, I had the feeling that we were being watched. I can't say for sure, but my gut is telling me that it knew we were there at night. It knew we were setting up camp, and it came in and cruised our camp, hung out, and followed us up the creek bed. It followed us back to the Jeep, and I don't know whether I surprised it at the creek or it was just, I can't say for sure. All I can tell you is, yes, I saw a 6 foot tall, covered in hair, black and white thing that was super powerful. We're not trying to seek any of this stuff out. We're not part of any Bigfoot community or anything like that. We just love the outdoors and nature, and
we're not the only people that have seen or heard stuff like this upstate New York. It's not just a West Coast thing. It does exist in Native American legends from the East Coast, and it's pretty monolithic within the legends of like what they look like and what they do. And they are known to especially steal Native American women, steal children,
pregnant women.
They're not always bad. Sometimes they're considered like the protector of the forest, but some of them are bad. In some stories, they like eat people. So, you know, there's stuff out there.
Check out Dave Politis' Missing 411 series. Talks about missing hikers, missing hunters, experienced outdoors people, and it's happening all over the place. Yellowstone's a hot spot, but there's stories in Texas, California, all over. We're just telling you what we experienced and what we saw, and leaving a record of it.
It's obviously a topic that has a lot of hoaxes and fakery and people trying to make a buck off it, but it's a very old legend, you know, within this land.
Some of the best channels I've come across in the last couple of months are Bob Gimlin, Dave Politis' work, Missing 411, and How to Hunt, especially How to Hunt. The gentleman is a professional hunting guide, travels into deep wilderness, and has some crazy stories. He's opened up his channel for other people to submit their stories, and it's wild. He says he literally gets hundreds of stories just like this every week.
We binge-watched that channel after this stuff happened. Oh my God, we're not the only ones.
Yeah, when we had the Morgan Hill encounter, it kind of blew my mind. For a minute, I was a little shocked. I was apprehensive about going into the woods, but we were back out the next week, and something else happened. We'll talk about it maybe in another video. It was pretty intense.
We're not gonna stop being outside in the nature, but if something ever does happen to us, we're telling you now, there's something out there.
So be safe out there. All the best to you. Thanks for watching. If you got any stories you'd like to share, drop us a comment. We're all ears.
And maybe we'll make another video sharing your story.
Cheers, guys.